Everyone thought I ran away from my wedding in tears. The truth? I canceled it 6 months ago. The ceremony my sister was rushing to attend? Legally meaningless. The marriage license she forged with my name? A felony. They were celebrating their betrayal while I was collecting evidence for their arrest. And on what should have been the happiest day of my life, I walked into that church not as a bride, but as a prosecutor. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far my message of justice and strength has reached across the world. My name is Sophia Marie Carter. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, the oldest daughter of Eleanor and James Carter. I'm a senior financial analyst at Morrison & Associates. I have a master's degree in business administration, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had my entire life figured out. A successful career, a beautiful home, a man I loved, and a sister I trusted. I thought I was one of the lucky ones who had it all together. I was wrong about so many things. But here's what I wasn't wrong about. I am strong, I am capable, and I refuse to be anyone's victim. This is my story. Let me start at the very beginning, because you need to understand who Rachel was to me before I can explain who she became. Rachel Ann Carter is my younger sister by exactly 18 months. We grew up sharing everything: a bedroom until I left for college, clothes that we'd borrow without asking, inside jokes that nobody else understood, and dreams about our futures that we'd whisper to each other late at night when we were supposed to be sleeping. When we were little girls, maybe 7 and 8 years old, we used to play wedding with our mother's old curtains. I'd wrap the heavy velvet drapes around myself like a wedding dress, and Rachel would follow behind me holding up the train, pretending to be my maid of honor. "You're so pretty, Sophia," she'd say, arranging flowers in my hair. "You're going to have the most beautiful wedding in the whole world." And I'd turn around and promise her, "And you'll be right there beside me, Rachel. You'll always be my maid of honor." Always. I kept that promise when I got engaged to Marcus 2 years ago. The very first thing I did after he proposed, even before I called our parents, was video call Rachel and ask her to be my maid of honor. She cried happy tears, or at least that's what I thought they were at the time. "Of course," she sobbed. "Of course I'll be your maid of honor, Soph. There's nowhere else I'd rather be." Now I know those tears meant something entirely different, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about Marcus first, because you need to understand what I thought I was losing when I discovered the truth. Marcus Bennett was 34 years old, 6'2", with deep brown skin, intelligent eyes, and a smile that could light up a room when he chose to use it. We met 4 years ago at a financial conference in Chicago. I was presenting a paper on investment strategies, and he was in the audience. After my presentation, he approached me at the networking mixer and said, "That was brilliant. I've been in this industry for 8 years, and I've never heard someone break down risk assessment quite like that. Can I buy you a drink and pick your brain about your methodology?" That drink turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a weekend exploring Chicago together. And by the time we both flew back to Atlanta, I knew I'd met someone special. Marcus was charming, attentive, ambitious, and he made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced before. He'd remember tiny details about conversations we'd had weeks ago. He'd send flowers to my office for no reason except that it was Tuesday. He'd text me good morning before I even woke up, and good night after I fell asleep. 6 months into our relationship, he said he loved me. A year in, we moved in together. At 18 months, he proposed at the same Chicago restaurant where we'd had our first real date. It felt like destiny, like every choice I'd made in my life had been leading me to this moment. Rachel loved Marcus too, or so I thought. She was at my apartment the night I came home with the engagement ring, bouncing up and down with excitement, planning details of my wedding before I'd even caught my breath. "You're so lucky, Soph," she kept saying. "Marcus is perfect. This is going to be perfect." She was at every wedding planning appointment, every cake tasting, every venue tour, every meeting with the florist. "I want to help," she'd insist. "Let me be involved in everything. I'm your maid of honor, after all. This is what sisters do. And I let her, grateful for her enthusiasm, touched by her involvement. I thought it meant she was happy for me. Now I know she was studying everything, learning every detail of my wedding so she could recreate it for herself once I was out of the picture. But let me tell you about the day everything changed. The day the storm I mentioned finally broke over my head and nearly drowned me. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early March, exactly 7 days before my scheduled wedding day. I remember it was Tuesday because I had a standing appointment with my therapist every Tuesday at noon. Yes, I was in therapy. I'd started going 6 months earlier when my anxiety about the wedding started spiraling. Not because I didn't want to marry Marcus, but because I felt this strange, unexplainable dread that I couldn't shake. My therapist, Dr. Patterson, kept telling me it was normal pre-wedding jitters, that many brides felt this way, that I should just breathe through it. I wish I'd listened to that dread. I wish I'd trusted my intuition instead of talking myself out of it. After my therapy session, I was supposed to go to the bridal boutique for my final dress fitting at 2 p.m. But Dr. Patterson's previous appointment ran over, so my session started 20 minutes late, which meant I was running late for the boutique. I texted them to let them know, grabbed my coat, and rushed across town, hoping the seamstress wouldn't be too annoyed with me. When I walked into Belladonna Bridal at 2:23 p.m., breathless and apologizing profusely, the seamstress, Mrs. Rodriguez, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Confusion, maybe, or concern. "Miss Carter?" she said slowly, carefully, like she was choosing her words with precision. "You just left 20 minutes ago." I stopped in my tracks, my apology dying on my lips. "What do you mean I just left? I literally just got here. I was running late for my therapy appointment." Mrs. Rodriguez walked to the back room and returned with her appointment book, her finger pointing to a line in the schedule. There, in handwriting that looked almost like mine but wasn't quite right, was a signature, Sophia Carter, 2 RPM. "She showed up right on time," Mrs. Rodriguez explained, her voice getting smaller as she seemed to realize something was wrong. "She had your appointment card, the one I gave you last month. She had your driver's license, which I checked very carefully like I always do. She said she needed to take the dress home for one final fitting at home, that you wanted to practice walking in it one more time before the wedding." She seemed so sweet, so excited. I didn't think twice about letting her take it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What did she look like?" "Well, like you," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "Same height, same complexion, same hair. That's why I didn't question the ID when I saw it. I thought it was you, Miss Carter." There was only one person in the world who looked enough like me to pass for me with a fake ID. Only one person who knew about my appointment at Belladonna Bridal, who had access to my appointment cards, who could have somehow gotten her hands on a driver's license with my name but her photo, my younger sister Rachel. I stood there in that bridal boutique, surrounded by white dresses and veils and dreams of happily ever after, and felt my entire world tilt sideways. Why would Rachel steal my wedding dress? There had to be an explanation. A surprise, maybe. Perhaps she wanted to have it altered better as a gift. Perhaps she wanted to take photos of it to show our mother, who was overseas and couldn't make it to the wedding. Perhaps, but deep in my gut, in that place where intuition lives, I knew. I knew this wasn't about a surprise. This was about something much darker. "Mrs. Rodriguez," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm even though I wanted to scream. "I need to see the security footage from today." "Right now," she hesitated. "Miss Carter, I'm not sure that's—" "Please," I interrupted. "Something is very wrong. I need to see it." She led me to the back office and pulled up the security camera feed from 2 p.m. And there, on the grainy black and white footage, I watched my sister Rachel walk into the boutique wearing sunglasses and a hat, present what must have been a fake ID, smile and laugh with Mrs. Rodriguez, and walk out 20 minutes later with my wedding dress in a protective garment bag. But that's not what made my blood turn to ice. It was the confidence in her walk. The practiced way she signed my name. The complete lack of guilt or hesitation. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was planned, rehearsed, executed with precision. Rachel had been preparing for this, but preparing for what? I thanked Mrs. Rodriguez, promised I wasn't angry with her, assured her we'd figure this out, and walked out of that boutique in a daze. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes, trying to process what I'd just learned, trying to convince myself there was still an innocent explanation. Then I drove to Rachel's apartment. She lived in a modern complex on the east side of town, a trendy neighborhood full of young professionals and overpriced coffee shops. I had a spare key to her place, which she'd given me 2 years ago for emergencies. I'd never used it before. I'd never needed to. But today felt like an emergency. I let myself into her apartment at 3:17 p.m. I remember the exact time because I looked at my phone, thinking I should text her to let her know I was there, then decided against it. If there was an innocent explanation, I'd apologize for snooping later. If there wasn't, I needed to know. The apartment was quiet, empty. Rachel was at work. She wouldn't be home until after 6. I had time. I walked through her living room, her kitchen, seeing nothing unusual. Then I opened her bedroom door, and my life split into before and after that moment. My wedding dress hung in her closet. Protected by the garment bag, yes, but next to it hung 3 bridesmaid dresses in different sizes. On the shelf above were boxes labeled in Rachel's handwriting. Backup favors, extra programs, reception decorations, alternate. But that wasn't the worst of it. Tucked into the frame of her full-length mirror was a photograph. In it, Rachel and Marcus were wrapped around each other on a beach somewhere tropical, palm trees and sunset in the background. His hand was on her waist, intimate and possessive. Her head was tilted back, laughing at something he'd said. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. The photo was time-stamped. 3 weeks ago, the exact weekend Marcus had told me he was at a mandatory work conference in Miami that partners couldn't attend. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and photographed everything. The dress, the bridesmaid gowns, the boxes, the picture, evidence. Though I didn't yet know what I'd need it for, my instincts told me to document everything. Then I looked around more carefully and found more. A hotel receipt from that Miami trip, charged to Marcus's credit card, but for a double occupancy room. Text message printouts, entire conversations between Rachel and Marcus dating back months, maybe longer. Love notes, plans, discussions about when Sophia is out of the picture and after the wedding is canceled. They'd been planning this. Planning us. I sat on Rachel's bedroom floor, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, and I didn't cry. I should have cried. That's what you're supposed to do when your whole world falls apart, right? But instead I felt something else crystallize inside me. Not pain, not yet. Pain would come later. What I felt in that moment was clarity. Diamond-hard, unbreakable clarity. I could scream. I could confront them. I could cancel the wedding and let everyone know what they'd done. I could fall apart. Those were the expected responses, the normal human reactions to discovering that the man you love and the sister you trust had been plotting against you. But as I sat there on that carpet, surrounded by evidence of their conspiracy, I realized something important. I didn't want to react normally. I wanted to react strategically. I wanted justice. I carefully, methodically photographed everything in that apartment. Every text message printout, every receipt, every handwritten note. I photographed the wedding dress, the bridesmaid gowns, the boxes of supplies. I even found Rachel's laptop open on her desk and photographed her email inbox, where I found drafts of announcements about her spontaneous wedding to Marcus, ready to send after mine was supposedly canceled. When I finished documenting everything, I put it all back exactly as I'd found it, hung the dress exactly where it had been, replaced the photo in the mirror frame at precisely the same angle, left no trace that I'd been there. Then I locked the apartment, got back in my car, and drove directly to my older brother Daniel's house across town. Daniel opened his front door, took one look at my face, and immediately pulled me inside. What happened? Daniel Marcus Carter is 4 years older than me, a high school history teacher, married to his college sweetheart Linda, father of 2 beautiful children. He's also the person I trust most in this entire world, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who beat up Tommy Jenkins in 7th grade when Tommy spread rumors about me, who drove 8 hours straight to help me move when I got my first apartment. Daniel has always been there when I needed him. I told him everything, showed him every photo on my phone, watched his face transform from concern to shock to rage to something colder and more calculating. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "What do you want to do, Soph?" "I want them to suffer," I said, and I meant it. But not the way they expect. I don't just want to cancel the wedding and let them slink away. I don't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking they won, of thinking they broke me. I want consequences. Real consequences. I want justice. Daniel nodded slowly, thinking. Then we need a lawyer, and we need to be very, very smart about this. That night, Daniel called in a favor from a colleague whose wife was an attorney specializing in fraud and identity theft. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she agreed to meet with us immediately that same evening, despite it being after hours. Sarah Chen's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass windows and minimalist furniture. She was maybe 40 years old with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. She listened to my entire story without interrupting, examined every photograph on my phone, and then leaned back in her leather chair with an expression that was almost predatory. "Do you know what they've actually done?" she asked. "I mean, legally speaking?" I shook my head. "Your sister committed identity theft when she impersonated you at the bridal shop. That's a Class C felony in Georgia, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. If she's planning what I think she's planning, if she attempts to use a marriage license with your name on it, that's fraud and forgery. That's another felony. And if your fiancé is complicit in this scheme, which all evidence suggests he is, then he's an accomplice to multiple felonies." I felt my heart start to race. "Can we prove it?" "If we set the right trap?" Sarah smiled. "Absolutely. Here's what we're going to do." The plan Sarah laid out was elegant in its simplicity, but would require perfect execution. I would pretend to know nothing. I would go through the motions of the final week before my wedding, act excited, act in love, act like the naive fool they clearly thought I was. Meanwhile, Sarah would be working behind the scenes, filing paperwork, gathering evidence, preparing legal documents. Most importantly, she would file an official cancellation of my marriage license application, which I would claim was done 6 months ago. This would make any ceremony using a license with my name legally invalid. When Rachel inevitably tried to use a forged license, she'd be committing a felony in real time, with witnesses. The key, Sarah explained, is letting them think they're getting away with it. Let them believe they've won. Let them walk into that church, start that ceremony, and the moment they attempt to sign that forged license, we have them, red-handed, with witnesses, with documentation, with irrefutable proof of their intent. Won't that be traumatic? Daniel asked. Having Sophia show up at her own canceled wedding? That's why she won't be showing up as a bride, Sarah said. She'll be showing up as a prosecutor, with police, with legal documents, with the full weight of the law behind her. They'll be the ones who are embarrassed, exposed, arrested. Not her. I looked at this woman, this stranger who'd agreed to meet me on short notice, who was laying out a plan for justice with the precision of a surgeon, and I felt something I hadn't felt since I'd walked into Rachel's apartment. Hope. How much will this cost? I asked, because lawyers like Sarah Chen don't come cheap. For what they did to you? She shook her head. This one's pro bono. I had a sister once. She stole my first boyfriend when I was 16. It nearly destroyed me. Nobody held her accountable, and she grew up thinking betrayal was acceptable. 20 years later, she's on her 4th marriage, having cheated her way through the first 3. Maybe if someone had stopped her early, shown her that actions have consequences. She trailed off, then refocused on me. Point is, I wish someone had done for me what I'm about to do for you. Consider this my chance to rewrite that story. I wanted to cry then. Wanted to hug this woman I barely knew. But instead, I just nodded and said, "Thank you. I'll never forget this." Thank me when they're behind bars, Sarah said. Now let's talk strategy. The next few days were the hardest performance of my life. Academy Award worthy, someone would later tell me. I'm not sure if that was a compliment. That first night, when I got home from meeting with Sarah, Marcus was already there. He'd made dinner, lit candles, poured wine. He looked at me with such apparent love and concern. "Hey, beautiful," he said, pulling me into a hug. "How was your day? You look stressed." I let him hold me, let him press his lips against my forehead, and I swallowed the nausea that threatened to overwhelm me. "Just pre-wedding jitters," I said, forcing a smile. "Lots to think about with only a week to go." "Hey," he pulled back to look at me, his hands on my shoulders, his eyes searching mine. "Cold feet is completely normal. But I want you to know, Sophia, that I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You are the woman I want to spend forever with. No matter what happens, no matter what doubts you have, I'm here. I love you. I choose you." The lies rolled off his tongue so smoothly I almost believed them myself. Almost. "I love you too," I said, because that was my line in this play we were performing, and I watched him smile, saw the relief in his eyes, and knew that he'd told Rachel I wasn't suspecting anything. Over dinner, he talked about our honeymoon plans. 2 weeks in Bali, he said. Beaches and resorts and nothing but time together. "I've been thinking," he added, swirling wine in his glass, "maybe after the honeymoon we should think about taking a longer trip. Maybe a year abroad. Really get away from everything. From work stress, from family expectations. Just us exploring the world together." I smiled and nodded, but I heard what he was really saying. Let's get far away from Atlanta, from anyone who might question what happened to you, so Rachel and I can start our life together without interference. "That sounds perfect," I said, and watched him relax, watched him think his plan was working. That night, as he slept beside me, I looked at his phone. I'd installed monitoring software on it weeks ago, something Sarah had recommended. Every text, every call, every email was being backed up to a secure server. The evidence was piling up, and he had no idea. A text from Rachel, sent at 11:43 p.m. "She suspects nothing. Stage 1 complete. Stage 2 begins tomorrow." His response at 11:44 p.m. "Perfect. 6 more days and we're free. Love you." I screenshotted it, backed it up, and lay back down beside him, staring at the ceiling, counting my breaths, reminding myself that this would all be over soon. The next morning, day 6 before the scheduled wedding, Rachel called me at 7 a.m. "Good morning, bride-to-be." Her voice was sickeningly cheerful. "I wanted to check in on you. How are you feeling? Excited? Nervous?" "Both," I said, stirring cream into my coffee, watching Marcus get ready for work in the other room. "It's starting to feel real." "Listen," Rachel said, and I could hear the calculation in her voice. "I've been thinking. Maybe we should get together today, just us sisters. A little pre-wedding quality time. What do you say?" "I'd love that," I lied. "What did you have in mind? Lunch at Antonio's, noon?" Antonio's was our favorite restaurant, the place where we'd celebrated birthdays and promotions and life milestones for years. She was choosing it deliberately, I realized. One final memory of sisterhood before she destroyed everything. "Perfect," I said. "I'll see you at noon." When Marcus left for work, kissing my cheek and reminding me he loved me, I immediately called Sarah. "She's meeting me for lunch," I told her. "What do I do?" "You go," Sarah said calmly. "You act normal. You play your part. And you wear the wire I'm about to have delivered to your house. We need her to implicate herself verbally, not just through text messages. If she says anything about the wedding, about Marcus, about her plans, we want it recorded." 30 minutes later, a courier arrived with a package from Sarah's firm. Inside was a small recording device that clipped onto my bra strap, completely invisible under my clothes. I put it on, tested it with a phone call to Sarah's office, and then got ready for lunch with my sister. Antonio's was crowded when I arrived at noon, full of business people on lunch breaks and young couples enjoying the spring day. Rachel was already there, sitting at our usual booth by the window, 2 glasses of iced tea already ordered. She stood up when she saw me, pulled me into a hug that felt like a knife between my shoulder blades. "You look beautiful," she said, and I realized she meant it. She admired me, envied me, hated me, all at the same time. What a complicated emotion to carry toward your own sister. We ordered salads, talked about nothing important for the first 10 minutes, and then Rachel got to her real agenda. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice dropping low, her eyes not quite meeting mine. My heart raced. Was she actually going to confess? After everything, was there still enough decency in her to tell me the truth? "What is it?" I asked, leaning forward, giving her space to be honest. She took a deep breath, and I watched her make her choice. I watched her decide who she was going to be in this moment. "I'm just so happy for you, Sophia," she said, and whatever small hope I'd had died. "You deserve all the happiness in the world. Marcus is perfect for you. This wedding is going to be perfect. Everything is going to be perfect." The word perfect seemed to echo around us. Perfect. 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 Nothing was perfect. Everything was broken. But she chose lies over truth, betrayal over honesty, conspiracy over confession. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady despite the grief crushing my chest. "That means a lot, Rachel. You've been such an amazing maid of honor through all of this. I don't know what I would have done without you." I watched her smile, watched her bask in my gratitude, and over her shoulder I saw the truth of who she'd become. Not my sister. Not anymore. Just someone who looked like her. We finished lunch. She paid, insisted on it, probably feeling generous now that she thought she was about to steal my entire life. As we stood to leave, she hugged me again. "I love you, big sis," she whispered. "No matter what happens, remember that I love you." "I love you too," I said, and I meant it. I loved the sister I thought I had. I grieved for her. But the woman standing in front of me? She was a stranger. When I got home, I sent the recording to Sarah. Within an hour, she called me back. "That's legally useless," she admitted. She didn't actually confess to anything. But it shows her deception, her ability to lie to your face. A jury will hear that recording, Sophia, and they'll understand exactly what kind of person she is. "Good," I said. "What's next?" Days 5, 4, 3 before the wedding blurred together in a carefully choreographed performance. I confirmed details with vendors. I called relatives to remind them of the time. I posted countdown photos on social media that made my stomach turn even as I smiled for the camera. I acted like a woman excited to marry the love of her life while documenting every text, every call, every piece of evidence that would eventually put them behind bars. Marcus suggested we spend the night before the wedding apart. Traditional, he called it, though we'd been living together for 2 years. I agreed, knowing he wanted time with Rachel without me around to interfere with their preparations. On day 2, Rachel came over to help me pack for the honeymoon. We sat on my bedroom floor, folding clothes into a suitcase, and she kept stealing glances at me like she was memorizing my face. Later, I would understand why. She thought she'd never see me again after this. Thought I'd be so humiliated, so destroyed by what they were about to do, that I'd leave Atlanta entirely, start over somewhere else, disappear from their lives. She was wrong about that too. The night before my wedding was supposed to happen, I didn't sleep at Daniel's house like the plan initially called for. Instead, I checked into the Four Seasons downtown, a beautiful hotel room on the 20th floor with views of the city sparkling below. Sarah had insisted on it. "You need to rest," she'd said. "Tomorrow is going to be intense. You need to be prepared physically and emotionally." So I ordered room service, took a long bath, and tried to quiet my racing mind. At 11 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, "Thinking about you. Can't wait to marry you tomorrow. Sleep well, my beautiful bride. Tomorrow, our forever begins." I turned off my phone without responding and stared out at the city lights, wondering how many other people out there were being betrayed by someone they loved. How many were choosing to fight back versus just walking away? How many would rather have justice than peace? I slept, finally, sometime after 2 a.m., and when I woke up at 8 a.m. on my wedding day, I didn't feel nervous. I felt ready. Sarah met me in the hotel lobby at 10 a.m. She was carrying a briefcase filled with legal documents, evidence files, and court orders. Behind her were 2 police officers in plain clothes, detectives who specialized in fraud cases. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked me one more time. "Once we start, there's no going back. They'll be arrested, prosecuted, their lives will change forever. You have to be absolutely certain this is what you want." I thought about 7-year-old me and 8-year-old Rachel playing wedding with our mother's curtains. I thought about teenage Sophia promising teenage Rachel that she'd always be her maid of honor. I thought about the sister I loved and the stranger she'd become. "I'm certain," I said. "Let's go." The church where my wedding was supposed to happen was called Sacred Heart, a beautiful old building with stained glass windows and wooden pews that had witnessed hundreds of weddings over the decades. I'd chosen it because Marcus and I had our first real conversation about marriage. There, after attending a friend's wedding 2 years ago, now it would be the scene of something entirely different. We arrived at the church at 11:15 a.m. The ceremony was supposed to start at 11:30. I could see guests arriving, confused looks on their faces as they whispered to each other about the missing bride. The venue manager, Mrs. Patterson, spotted me and rushed over. "Miss Carter! Thank God you're here. Everyone's been so worried. Your sister said you were having second thoughts, that you might not come. But I knew." "It's okay, Mrs. Patterson," I interrupted gently. "Everything is exactly as it should be. Is the ceremony starting?" She looked confused by my jeans and t-shirt, by the lawyers and police officers behind me, but she nodded. "Your sister said to start at 11:30 regardless of whether you arrived. She said you'd understand." "I do understand," I said. "Please proceed exactly as planned. We'll wait out here until the right moment." Mrs. Patterson hesitated, clearly confused, but she'd been paid well and had signed the agreement to cooperate. She went inside. Daniel arrived then, had been parking the car, and he stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "I will be," I said. "In about 15 minutes I will be." At exactly 11:35 a.m., I heard the wedding march begin to play inside the church. Through the glass doors, I could see my aunt wiping tears, my cousin whispering to his wife, my best friend from college looking around in confusion, wondering where I was. And then I saw Rachel walk down the aisle. She was wearing my wedding dress, the one she'd stolen from Belladonna Bridal, altered to fit her perfectly. She'd done her hair exactly like I'd planned to do mine, swept up with small white flowers woven through it. She carried a bouquet of peonies, my favorite flowers. She looked, I had to admit, beautiful. Behind her came 3 bridesmaids in the dresses I'd seen in her closet. Friends of Rachel's who apparently thought this was all somehow normal and okay. And at the altar, waiting with a smile that I now recognized as false, was Marcus. Through the security camera feed that Daniel had set up on his phone, we watched the ceremony begin. We heard the pastor say, "We are gathered here today." We watched Marcus take Rachel's hands. We watched her smile at him like he was her whole world. The pastor continued, "If anyone here has any objection to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace." And that was when I pushed open those church doors and walked down the center aisle in my jeans and t-shirt, Sarah Chen and 2 police officers right behind me. The entire church fell silent. The music stopped. Everyone turned to stare. Rachel saw me, and the color drained from her face so completely I thought she might faint. Her hands dropped from Marcus's, and the bouquet fell to the floor with a soft thud. "Sophia," she breathed. And I heard everything in that one word. Shock, fear, guilt, and underneath it all, anger that I'd ruined her moment. I walked all the way to the front of the church, stood right there at the altar, and looked between my sister and my ex-fiancé. They were both frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. "Hello, Rachel," I said calmly. "Lovely dress. It looks better on you than it did on me, I have to admit. Did you enjoy stealing it from the bridal boutique while pretending to be me? Was identity theft everything you hoped it would be?" Gasps echoed through the pews. Relatives and friends who'd had no idea what was happening were beginning to understand. Rachel found her voice. I can explain. Sophia, please, I can explain everything. Can you? I asked. Can you explain why you're wearing my stolen wedding dress? Can you explain the forged marriage license you and Marcus were about to sign? Can you explain 6 months of planning to destroy my life so you could take my place? More gasps. Someone started crying. Someone else stood up like they were about to leave. I thought you didn't want this, Rachel said desperately. I thought you left. I thought you had cold feet. I was just trying to save everyone from embarrassment. I was trying to— Liar, I interrupted, my voice cutting through her excuses like a knife. You've been sleeping with Marcus for months. You stole my wedding dress 3 weeks ago, long before today. You've been planning this, plotting this, scheming how to take everything that was mine. And you know what the funny thing is? I've known about all of it for 6 months. The church was absolutely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. Marcus finally spoke. Sophia, baby, please. Let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. Don't, I said sharply. Don't call me baby. Don't insult my intelligence with more lies. I have evidence, Marcus. Months of text messages, photos, receipts, plans. I have recordings of you two discussing when I'd be out of the picture. I have proof that you've been conspiring to defraud me, to humiliate me, to destroy me. And I have something else too. I turned to Sarah, who stepped forward with her briefcase. Everyone, I said, addressing the whole church now. This is Sarah Chen, my attorney. She has some information to share with you about what's really happening here today. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick file of documents. Her voice was clear, calm, professional. 6 months ago, my client discovered the affair between her fiancé and her sister. Instead of reacting emotionally, she came to me and we began documenting everything. Every text message, every photo, every lie. Building a case of fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. She pulled out a document and held it up. This is proof that Sophia Carter legally canceled her marriage license application 6 months ago. Any ceremony here today is legally meaningless. There is no valid marriage license. She pulled out another document. This is documentation of identity theft committed by Rachel Carter when she impersonated her sister at Belladonna Bridal 3 weeks ago, stealing a wedding dress valued at $8,000. Another document. This is the forged marriage license that Rachel and Marcus attempted to use today, with Sophia's name and a forged signature. Attempting to use this document is felony fraud. And one final document. These are text messages and emails between Marcus Bennett and Rachel Carter, showing premeditated fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and planning to defraud Sophia of her home, her financial assets, and her reputation. Sarah looked at Rachel and Marcus with an expression of professional disdain. You didn't just betray someone who loved you. You committed multiple felonies while doing it. The police officers stepped forward then, and I watched Rachel's face as she understood what was about to happen. Rachel Ann Carter, one officer said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. No, Rachel whispered. But they were already cuffing her hands behind her back, still in my wedding dress. Sophia, please. I'm your sister. We're family. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing this to you, I said, and my voice was calm, collected, cold. You did this to yourself. Every choice you made, every lie you told, every law you broke, that was all you. These are just the consequences. The second officer approached Marcus. Marcus Bennett, you're under arrest as an accomplice to fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Marcus didn't scream like Rachel. He just looked at me with something between disbelief and begrudging respect. I actually loved you, he said. No, I corrected him. You loved what I represented. Stability, financial security, someone you could use and manipulate. But you never loved me, Marcus. If you had, we wouldn't be here. As the police led them out of the church in handcuffs, still in their wedding clothes, heading for jail instead of a honeymoon, Rachel twisted around to look at me one more time. I hate you, she mouthed. I know, I mouthed back. When they were gone, when the church doors closed behind them and I could hear the police cars starting outside, I finally turned to face the stunned congregation of family and friends who'd witnessed everything. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But my voice stayed steady. "I'm sorry you all had to see that," I said. "I'm sorry this day didn't turn out the way anyone expected. But I need you to understand something. When someone betrays you, when someone you love tries to destroy you, you have choices. You can fall apart. You can let them win. You can pretend it didn't happen. Or you can stand up, document everything, gather your evidence, and make sure they face real consequences for their actions." I took a breath. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, about accountability, about making sure that what they did to me doesn't happen to anyone else, about refusing to be a victim and taking back my power. My aunt stood up in one of the front pews, tears streaming down her face. "Sophia, honey, are you okay? Are you really okay?" "I will be," I said honestly. "It's going to take time. It's going to take therapy and healing and learning to trust again. But yes, Aunt Claire, I will be okay, because I didn't let them destroy me. I took control. I chose justice over suffering in silence." Daniel appeared at my side then, his arm around my shoulders. "Come on, sis. Let's get out of here." As we walked out of that church, past the flowers and the decorations and all the trappings of a wedding that never was, my phone started buzzing in my pocket. Messages from friends, from relatives, from people who'd been at the ceremony. Some expressed shock, some expressed support, some just wanted to know if I was okay. But there was one message that stood out, from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Patterson. I just heard what happened. I want you to know that 6 months ago, when you started having those feelings of dread about your wedding, that wasn't anxiety. That was your intuition trying to protect you. I should have listened better. I'm so sorry. But I'm also incredibly proud of you for what you just did. That took more courage than most people have in a lifetime." I sat in Daniel's car outside the church and cried for the first time since all of this began. Not because I was sad, exactly, though there was sadness in those tears. But mostly because I was relieved. It was over. The performance was over. The fear and the lies and the pretending were done. In the weeks that followed, the story became somewhat public. Not because I wanted attention, but because Rachel and Marcus's arrests were a matter of public record, and people talk. The case became something of a sensation locally. "Woman exposes sister and fiancé's fraud plot at fake wedding," the headlines read. Some people said I was too harsh, that I should have just broken up with Marcus and cut ties with Rachel, that I didn't need to involve lawyers and police. But those people didn't understand. What Rachel and Marcus did wasn't just morally wrong, it was illegal. Identity theft is a crime. Fraud is a crime. Forgery is a crime. And if I hadn't held them accountable, they would have done it to someone else eventually. The prosecution moved forward with full force. Sarah presented all the evidence we'd gathered over 6 months. Text messages, emails, photos, recordings. The identity theft at the bridal boutique, captured on security footage. The forged marriage license with my name on it. The conspiracy to defraud me of assets and property. Rachel's public defender tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that Rachel had mental health issues, that she was jealous and made bad choices but didn't deserve prison. The jury didn't buy it. Marcus's lawyer tried to claim he was manipulated by Rachel, that he'd tried to break things off with me properly, but she'd convinced him otherwise. The evidence of his text messages saying, "When Sophia is out of the picture," proved otherwise. The trial took 3 weeks. I sat in that courtroom every single day, watching evidence be presented, listening to witnesses testify, seeing Rachel and Marcus try to minimize what they'd done. Rachel cried on the stand. She talked about growing up in my shadow, always feeling like the less successful sister, the less beautiful one, the one who never quite measured up. She said she thought if she could take Marcus, take my wedding, take my life, she'd finally feel like she was enough. "I'm sorry." "Sophia," she said, looking directly at me with tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry for everything. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please forgive me." And I wanted to forgive her. Part of me desperately wanted to forgive her. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. And more importantly, I didn't believe her remorse was real. I thought she was sorry she got caught. Not sorry for what she'd done. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Rachel was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 5 years probation after release. Marcus received 18 months and 3 years probation. They were also ordered to pay restitution for all legal fees. For the stolen wedding dress, for emotional distress, for everything. When the verdict was read, Rachel looked across the courtroom at me with eyes full of something I couldn't quite name. Hate, maybe, or regret, or both, she mouthed. I hope you're happy. I mouthed back. I will be. Because here's the truth about justice. It doesn't make you happy immediately. It doesn't erase the pain or undo the betrayal or fix what's broken inside you. But it does give you something vital. Closure. It gives you proof that actions have consequences. It gives you the knowledge that you stood up for yourself when it mattered most. After the trial, I sold the condo Marcus and I had shared and bought a smaller townhouse on the other side of Atlanta. New neighborhood, new start, new life. I threw myself into work, earning the promotion to senior analyst that I'd been working toward for 3 years. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my relationship with Marcus. I started therapy with a new counselor, Dr. Williams, who specialized in betrayal trauma. You did something remarkable, Dr. Williams told me in one of our early sessions. Most people, when faced with that level of betrayal, either implode or explode. You did neither. You strategized. You documented. You built a case. That takes incredible emotional regulation and strength. I don't feel strong, I admitted. Most days I feel broken. You can be both, she said. Broken and strong. Hurt and powerful. That's what healing looks like. Not pretending the pain doesn't exist, but refusing to let it define you. Slowly, over months, I healed. The wound became a scar. The scar became a story. And the story became wisdom. A year after the wedding that wasn't, I was having dinner at Daniel's house. A regular Sunday family tradition we'd established after everything happened. His daughter Emma, 9 years old and precociously wise, asked me a question while we were clearing dishes after dinner. Aunt Sophia, do you still miss Uncle Marcus? The adults at the table went silent, waiting to see how I'd answer. I miss who I thought he was, I said carefully. I miss the person I believed I was marrying. But that person never existed, Emma. He was a character Marcus was playing, a role he was performing. So no, I don't miss the real Marcus. And I don't miss the real Rachel either. Are you going to get married someday? Emma asked. To someone else? I thought about it. Maybe, I said. If I meet someone who deserves me. Someone who sees me for who I really am and loves that person. Someone who would never, ever betray me. Someone whose actions match their words. Do people like that even exist? Emma asked with childish skepticism. I looked at Daniel, at how he treated Linda with respect and love, at how he dropped everything to help me when I needed him. I thought about Sarah Chen, who'd helped me for free because she believed in justice. I thought about all the people who'd supported me through this nightmare. Yes, I said. People like that exist. They're rare, but they're real. And they're worth waiting for. 6 months later, I met James. It was at a coffee shop on a random Tuesday morning. I was working on a presentation for a client meeting, buried in my laptop, when someone tapped my shoulder. Excuse me? Is this seat taken? I looked up to see a man about my age, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. It's all yours, I said, moving my bag. Thanks. I'm James, by the way. Sophia, we started talking. Just casual conversation at first, nothing deep. But there was something about him that felt different. Real. Safe. When he asked for my number, I hesitated. Not because I wasn't interested, but because the idea of trusting someone new felt terrifying. Full disclosure, I said. I have a complicated past. Nothing I did wrong, but something really bad that was done to me. And because of that, I'm very, very careful about who I let into my life now. James nodded seriously. That's smart. We all have stories, right? Maybe sometime you'll tell me yours and I'll tell you mine. No pressure. No expectations. Just honesty. I'd like that, I said and meant it. That was 2 years ago. James and I took things slowly. Really slowly. I told him everything about Rachel and Marcus, about the betrayal and the trial and the healing process. He listened without judgment, held my hand when the memories got hard, and never once made me feel damaged or broken. He just loved me, patiently and consistently, until I learned to trust again. Last month, James proposed. Not at a fancy restaurant or a public place where I'd feel pressured to say yes. Just the two of us, walking on a beach at sunset, him suddenly stopping and turning to me with a small velvet box in his hand. "Sophia," he said, "I know marriage is complicated for you. I know you've been hurt in ways that most people can't even imagine. And I want you to know that I understand if you're not ready, if you never want to get married at all. I will love you and be committed to you regardless of what label we use. But if you're willing, if you trust me enough, I would be honored to be your husband. Will you marry me?" I looked at this man, this kind, patient, honest man who'd never once given me a reason to doubt him. And I said yes. We're planning a small ceremony. Just close friends and family. No elaborate dress that could be stolen. No big venue that requires months of deposits. Just a simple celebration of love with people we trust. Rachel won't be invited. She's still in prison serving her sentence. She sent me one letter 6 months ago, apologizing again, asking for forgiveness, wondering if we could ever be sisters again. I didn't respond. Not because I'm cruel, but because I've learned that forgiveness isn't required for healing. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is accept that someone you loved became someone you can't trust, and move on without them in your life. Marcus reached out once too, after he was released from prison. A long email apologizing, saying he understood if I hated him, asking if we could ever be friends. I didn't respond to that either. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes, but I did send one letter. To my parents, who had tried to pressure me to forgive Rachel, to be the bigger person, to remember that family is family. I wrote, "Rachel stopped being family when she chose to betray me. Family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty, trust, respect. It's about the people who stand beside you, not the ones who stab you in the back. Daniel is family. Sarah is family now too, and so are all the people who supported me when Rachel was trying to destroy me. But Rachel? She made her choice. And I'm making mine. I choose peace over toxicity. I choose justice over false forgiveness. And I choose to build a life surrounded by people who actually love me, not people who love what they can take from me." My mother wrote back saying she understood, that she was proud of me, that she was sorry for pushing me to forgive before I was ready. My father never responded. I think he's still angry that I tore the family apart. But I didn't tear anything apart. Rachel did that when she slept with my fiancé and stole my wedding dress. I just refused to pretend it didn't happen. The story you have just heard has been modified in names and places to protect the identity of the people involved. We do not tell this to judge, but with the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. If you're going through something similar right now, if someone you trusted has betrayed you, I want you to know this. You are not weak for being hurt. You are not stupid for believing in someone. You are not wrong for feeling devastated, but you are also not powerless. You have choices. You can document everything, seek legal advice, and hold people accountable for their actions. You can protect yourself. You can refuse to be a victim. You can turn your pain into power and your betrayal into justice. It won't be easy. Some people will tell you you're overreacting, that you should just move on, that revenge isn't the answer. But this isn't revenge. This is accountability. This is consequences. This is making sure that what happened to you doesn't happen to someone else. I chose to fight back not because I'm cruel, but because I'm strong. I chose justice not because I'm vindictive, but because I believe in doing what's right even when it's hard. And I chose to share my story not to glorify my actions, but to show others that they don't have to accept betrayal silently. To every woman who's been cheated on, lied to, manipulated, betrayed by someone they trusted, you deserve better. You deserve honesty, loyalty, real love. And if someone can't give you that, then they don't deserve you. Stand up. Document everything. Seek help from people you trust. And never ever let anyone make you feel like you should accept less than you deserve. Because here's what I learned from all of this. Justice isn't about making yourself feel better. It's about making sure the truth wins. It's about protecting the next person who might be hurt by the same people who hurt you. It's about refusing to let cruelty and betrayal go unpunished just because it's uncomfortable to hold people accountable. I don't regret what I did. Not the 6 months of planning, not the courthouse appearance, not the trial, not the consequences that Rachel and Marcus faced. They made choices. They broke laws. They hurt someone who loved them. And they paid the price for that. That's not revenge. That's justice. And if I had to do it all over again, knowing everything I know now, I wouldn't change a single thing. God always blesses those who stand up for themselves. And I am sure that courage will lead us all to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I will leave you 2 of the channel's favorite stories. I am sure you will be surprised.